My daughter moved to Europe and left my grandson with me. I had no money and texted a stranger by mistake, asking for $40 to buy baby formula. The reply said, "You are a warrior." The next morning, a box appeared at my door, and inside was $10,000. I'm glad you're here. Watch until the end. And comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. I never thought my own daughter could look me straight in the eye and lie so calmly. But there she was, Sarah, standing in my tiny living room with her suitcase in one hand and baby Tommy on her hip, telling me about a temporary business opportunity in Europe. "It's only for 6 months, Mom," she said confidently. "David's company is opening a branch in Paris and they asked him to go. The salary's incredible, enough to finally pay off our debts." I watched her bounce Tommy gently. His 8-month-old eyes followed every move she made, his tiny fingers gripping her shirt. My heart ached. He was so attached to her. "But why can't you take Tommy with you?" I asked, though deep down, I already knew. Sarah's face tightened, then she put on that polite smile I'd seen her use with landlords and bill collectors. "The housing is complicated, Mom. It's temporary corporate housing, not safe for a baby. Once we're settled, we'll send for Tommy right away." That phrase, "send for Tommy," made my stomach twist, like he was just a package waiting to be delivered. "Sarah, I'm already working 2 jobs. My medication alone costs more than I earn some weeks. Winter's coming and the heating bills—" "Mom, please," she cut in. "You raised me on your own. Tommy's easy. He sleeps through the night. We'll send money as soon as David gets paid." I looked down at Tommy, who reached out for me with chubby little arms and made those soft sounds that always melted my heart. How could I refuse? Sarah smiled and settled him into my arms. "You've said you miss having a baby around. The house feels too quiet." That was 20 years ago, I thought, back when my body didn't ache every morning and I could still move without pain. But when Tommy nestled against me, his warmth and innocence filled my chest with love. 6 months, I said. "You'll call every day." "Of course, Mom," she promised. That was 3 months ago. The calls stopped after the first week. Now I was standing in the grocery store holding the cheapest can of formula I could find. Tommy was strapped to my chest in a second-hand carrier, crying softly. I had $12 in my wallet. The formula cost $18. For a moment, I just stared at the can, praying my card wouldn't decline again. "Excuse me, ma'am," a gentle voice said. I turned to see a young employee with kind eyes and a name tag that read, Jessica. "Are you okay? You look a little pale." The kindness in her voice nearly broke me. When was the last time someone had asked if I was okay? "I'm fine," I whispered, though my voice trembled. Jessica glanced at Tommy, who was now whimpering again. "He's beautiful," she said softly. "How old?" 8 months, I answered. The words felt heavy, a mix of pride and exhaustion. Jessica looked around, then lowered her voice. "My shift ends in 20 minutes. If you need to wait until your next check comes in, I get it. I've been there." Her kindness was like sunlight breaking through a storm. "Thank you," I whispered. "But I'll find a way. I always do." I left the store that day empty-handed, Tommy's cries echoing behind me as I pushed the cart back into the parking lot. In the car, I tried calling Sarah one more time. Straight to voicemail. "Hi, you've reached Sarah. I can't take your call right now, but leave a message and I'll get back to you as soon as possible." The same cheerful voice that had promised to call every day. The same voice that had said, "It's only temporary." That night, as I mixed the last of the formula, stretching it just enough to get Tommy through until morning, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to swallow my pride and ask for help. My neighbor, Mrs. Chen, had always been kind, bringing soup when I was sick, checking on me during storms. Surely she'd understand. I stared at my phone for almost an hour before I finally gathered the courage to type, "Hi, Mrs. Chen. I hope you don't mind me asking, but I'm in a tight spot. Could I borrow $40 for baby formula? I'll pay you back Friday when my check comes in. I'm so sorry to ask." My thumb hovered over send. 63 years old. and begging for help to feed my grandson. This wasn't how I imagined my golden years would look. Tommy slept peacefully beside me, his tiny chest rising and falling in that perfect rhythm that only babies have. He'd been fussier than usual that day, maybe sensing my stress. Babies always know. I pressed send before I could change my mind. The reply came almost instantly. "You are a warrior woman." I frowned. That didn't sound like Mrs. Chen. Her English was polite, careful, not like this. The message was bold, confident, too different, too American. Before I could think, my phone buzzed again. This time, a notification from my bank app. Deposit, $10,000. I blinked, certain my tired eyes were playing tricks on me. 10,000? That couldn't be real. I refreshed the app. It was still there. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped the phone. Banks don't just give people $10,000 by mistake, do they? I scrolled up, rechecking the number I'd sent my message to. It wasn't Mrs. Chen's. In my exhaustion, I had sent my most desperate message to a complete stranger. And that stranger had just wired me $10,000. My first instinct was panic. This couldn't be right. Too much money meant either something illegal or something with strings attached. I'd heard of scams like this, people sending money, then demanding it back with threats. I called the number, one ring, then voicemail, no greeting, just a beep. "Hello," I said, my voice trembling. "I think there's been a mistake. I texted you by accident, and now there's money in my account that doesn't belong to me. Please call me back so we can fix this." I hung up and immediately called my bank. After 20 minutes of transfers and hold music, a representative finally came on. "Mrs. Williams," she said, "this is a verified transfer from a confirmed account. The transaction is clean and complete, but I can't see who sent it." "It has to be a mistake," I said. "Ma'am, whoever sent this would have needed your full name and account number. Are you sure you don't know them?" I wasn't sure of anything anymore. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, Tommy sleeping beside me. The money was real, and whoever sent it knew exactly who I was and where to find me. It should have terrified me, but instead, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. With that money, I could buy formula, pay rent, fill my prescriptions. For the first time in a long time, I could breathe. Still, deep down, it didn't feel right. It wasn't my money. The next morning, I was changing Tommy's diaper when there was a knock at the door. Through the peephole, I saw a delivery man holding a large, elegant box. "Martha Williams?" he asked. I nodded, though every instinct told me to say no. "Sign here, please." The box was heavy, wrapped in silver ribbon with thick, expensive paper. No return address, just my name written in graceful script across a cream-colored card. Inside, nestled in layers of tissue paper, were the most beautiful baby clothes I'd ever seen. Soft, organic cotton, tiny sweaters that looked like something from a boutique catalog, and at the bottom, several cans of premium formula, the kind I'd never dreamed of affording. But then I saw the note. "For the warrior who fights alone, you are seen, you are valued. Do not look for me." My heart stopped. I dropped the card like it burned. Someone was watching me. Someone knew about my struggle, knew about Tommy, knew I was fighting to keep us both alive. Who were they? And what did they want? Tommy laughed from his bouncer, kicking his legs happily, unaware that our lives had just taken a turn into something that felt both miraculous and terrifying. I ran my fingers over one of the soft baby outfits, unsure whether to cry or pray. Part of me wanted to send everything back, delete the message, pretend none of it had ever happened. But another part of me whispered, "Maybe this was meant to find you." But as I looked at Tommy, his bright, trusting eyes fixed on the colorful toys that had also come in that mysterious box, I knew I couldn't turn away. Whoever was behind this had given my grandson what I couldn't. For the first time in months, I didn't have to worry about stretching formula or choosing between his needs and my own. I was deeply grateful and quietly afraid, because in my experience, nothing good ever comes without a price. The question was, What would this generosity eventually cost me? Now, before I go on, I want to ask you something. If you were in my shoes, alone, struggling, and suddenly handed this kind of miracle, what would you do? Would you accept the help or send it back? Tell me in the comments, and while you're there, check the final screen for 2 other stories that my viewers say they'll never forget. The packages didn't stop. Every few days, another elegant delivery appeared at my door. Educational toys that Tommy adored, organic baby food in flavors I'd never even heard of, and then a sleek, high-end stroller that folded with a single touch of a button. Each box came with the same kind of note, written in that familiar, elegant script, for the warrior's little prince. Because every battle deserves the best armor. At first, the messages felt comforting, but soon they started to unsettle me. I was trying so hard to live normally, to act like my life hadn't been completely upended by a stranger's impossible kindness, but it was getting harder to pretend. Neighbors had started to whisper, "Martha sure is getting a lot of packages lately," I overheard Mrs. Patterson say to her husband as I carried Tommy inside one afternoon. "Wonder where she's getting the money for all that fancy stuff." She didn't even bother lowering her voice. I'd lived in this neighborhood for 15 years. I'd brought her casseroles when her husband was in the hospital, and now she was looking at me like I'd done something wrong, like I'd become someone she couldn't trust. It got worse at the park. Tommy's new stroller turned heads everywhere we went. The old me would have been invisible among the young mothers with their designer diaper bags and matching outfits. But now, pushing a stroller that probably cost more than my car, I stood out in all the wrong ways. "That's a bugaboo fox," one mother whispered to another, loud enough for me to hear. "Those retail for like $1,500. Must be nice to have family money." Family money. If only she knew. My family was living it up in Europe while I was here, scraping by. That afternoon I called Sarah again. This time, she answered. "Mom," she said cheerfully, laughter and music echoing behind her. "How's my baby boy doing?" "He's fine," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "No thanks to you?" "Sarah, it's been 3 months. When are you coming back for him?" There was a pause, the sound of her moving away from the noise. "Actually, Mom, that's why I'm calling. David's company extended his assignment. They love him here, and they've offered him a permanent position. We're thinking of making Paris home." My stomach dropped. "What about Tommy?" "Well, that's the thing," she said lightly. "We'd love to bring him over, but the paperwork's complicated. And honestly, he's doing so well with you. You always said I was too young when I had him, that I didn't know what I was doing. This way, he gets stability." Her words twisted like a knife. Yes, I'd been worried when she got pregnant at 26 with a man she'd barely known. Yes, I'd told her to wait. But I had never said she wasn't fit to be a mother. "Sarah," I said slowly, "I'm 63. I'm working 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. I can't raise a baby." "But you're doing such a wonderful job," she chirped. "Didn't you say you were lonely after I moved out? Now you have Tommy to keep you company." The manipulation was so thick it made me sick. She was rewriting the past, turning her abandonment into some kind of gift. "I need you to send money for his care," I said firmly. "Diapers, formula, doctor's visits, it all costs money I don't have." "Of course, Mom. David's first full paycheck comes next month. We'll send something then. Next month. Always next month." After I hung up, I sat on the couch holding Tommy. He was chewing happily on a teething ring from one of the mysterious boxes, looking up at me with those trusting blue eyes, completely unaware that his mother had just, in her own way, let him go. That evening, I was giving Tommy his bath when I heard a car door slam outside. Through the fogged bathroom window, I caught a glimpse of a black sedan parked across the street. The windows were tinted, and I couldn't see who was inside, but something about it made my skin crawl. The car didn't move for almost an hour. I called the police, but by the time they arrived, the sedan was gone. The responding officer, a tired-looking man in his 40s, took my statement with the kind of reluctance that told me he'd seen too much and cared too little. "Has anyone threatened you directly, ma'am?" "No," I said. "But someone's been sending me packages. And now there's a car watching my house." "Packages?" He frowned. "What kind of packages?" I hesitated. How could I explain that a stranger had been showering me with luxury baby supplies without sounding either paranoid or guilty? "Things for my grandson," I said finally. The officer's eyes drifted over my modest living room, the expensive stroller, the designer diaper bag, the toys scattered across the rug. "And you don't know who's sending them?" "No," I said weakly. "Maybe someone has the wrong address." Even as I spoke, I knew how absurd that sounded. Wrong address? But they knew my name. Wrong address? But every single item fit Tommy's age perfectly. The officer closed his notebook. "Unless someone threatens you or steps onto your property, there's not much we can do," he said with a half smile. "Maybe you've got a secret admirer." He actually chuckled, completely missing the fear in my eyes. After he left, I checked every lock twice and pulled every curtain shut. Tommy was restless that night, picking up on my unease. I kept glancing through the windows, searching for those dark, tinted glass panes across the street. The next morning brought another package. This one was different, smaller, personal. Inside was a silver locket, old-fashioned and delicate, with a tiny photograph tucked inside. It was of Tommy and me, sitting on a park bench. We were laughing at something just outside the frame. But here's the thing. I had no memory of anyone taking that picture. My hands trembled as I read the note inside the box. "Every warrior needs a talisman. You are not as alone as you think." My heart pounded. Someone had been close enough to photograph us, close enough to watch me without my knowing. They knew where I went, what I did, how I lived. I grabbed my phone and started to dial 911, then stopped. What would I even say? That someone was giving me gifts and taking pictures of me in public? That I was terrified by kindness? Instead, I did something I hadn't done in decades. I prayed. "Please," I whispered, holding Tommy close as he slept against my chest. "If you're listening, help me understand what's happening. Help me protect him." And then, as if in answer, my phone buzzed. A text. From that number. "Tomorrow, 3 p.m., Riverside Park, bench by the duck pond. Come alone with Tommy. It's time you knew the truth." My blood ran cold. This person knew my routine, knew that every Thursday afternoon, Tommy and I went to feed the ducks. They'd been watching long enough to plan this. I looked down at Tommy, so small, so trusting. Whatever game this was, my grandson was somehow at the center of it. The question was I brave enough to find out why? I hardly slept that night. Every creak of the house made me jump. Every passing car sent me to the window, phone in hand. Tommy woke up 3 times, something he hadn't done in months, and each time I held him a little tighter. By morning, I'd decided I wouldn't go. Meeting that stranger felt like walking straight into danger. But as the hours passed and the walls of our small apartment closed in, my fear began to change into something else. Determination. I needed answers. Living in fear wasn't living at all. At 2:45 p.m., I strapped Tommy into his stroller and walked the 6 blocks to Riverside Park. My legs felt heavy, my mouth dry despite the crisp October air. I kept glancing behind me, half expecting that black sedan to reappear. The park looked normal. Families, joggers, teenagers skipping class, and somehow that made it even more unnerving. At exactly 3 p.m., I reached the duck pond and sat on our usual bench, the one with the best view of the water. I positioned the stroller so I could see in every direction, my hand gripping the handle like a lifeline. "Mrs. Williams?" I spun around. A man was stepping out from behind a large oak tree. He looked to be in his late 60s. Silver hair, wire-rimmed glasses, kind eyes. He wore a navy jacket and khaki pants, like any grandfather you'd see at the park. This wasn't the dangerous figure I'd imagined. "Please don't be afraid," he said, stopping a few feet away and raising his hand slightly. My name is Richard Morrison. I'm the one who's been sending the packages." "Why?" The word came out barely louder than a whisper. Richard glanced at Tommy, gurgling happily at the ducks, blissfully unaware of the tension thick in the air. "May I sit down?" he asked gently. "It's a long story." Every instinct screamed for me to grab Tommy and run. But something in Richard's voice, the tremor, the honesty, made me pause. He didn't seem threatening. If anything, he looked just as nervous as I felt. "Slowly," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Richard eased himself onto the far end of the bench, careful to leave space between us. Up close, I could see it, the grief behind his calm expression, the kind that never fully leaves a person. 3 years ago, he began softly, I lost my wife, Catherine. Pancreatic cancer. We fought for 2 years, treatments, trials, anything that might buy more time. He paused, watching a duck disappear beneath the pond's surface. Catherine always said her one regret was not having children. We tried, but it wasn't meant to be. Before she passed, she made me promise something. I swallowed. What kind of promise? She wanted me to use everything we'd saved our retirement, the insurance, everything, to help families in need, not through charities or organizations where money disappears into paperwork. She wanted it personal, direct, human. My fear began to fade, replaced by quiet curiosity. After she died, he continued, I was lost, angry at God, angry at the world, angry at myself for not being able to save her. Then, about 6 months ago, I started monitoring local area codes, looking for people who might need help. Monitoring? I asked, frowning. He looked embarrassed. I built a system to catch misdialed messages, wrong numbers. Most are calls for pizza or delivery orders, but sometimes I'd intercept something real. A mother asking for help with rent, a father searching for work, an elderly person trying to reach family. And then it clicked. My text, the one about the baby formula, went to one of your monitored numbers. Richard nodded. When I read it, when I saw the desperation and love in those few words, I knew I'd found what Catherine wanted me to find. I stared at him, stunned. So, you investigated me. I had to be sure, he said gently, that you were real, that this wasn't a scam. I'm sorry about the photographs, about watching you. I just needed to understand before I could help. The invasion of privacy still hurt, but I could see his reasoning. What did you find? I asked. Richard's face darkened, not with guilt, but anger. I found a 63-year-old woman working herself to exhaustion to raise a child who isn't hers. Someone forced to choose between medication and food, between heating and diapers. I found a warrior just like I said in that first message. Tommy dropped his toy, and without thinking, Richard bent to pick it up. As he handed it back, his eyes softened, lingering on my grandson's face with a tenderness that caught me off guard. He drew a breath. I also found proof that your daughter and her husband have been posting photos from luxury hotels and restaurants across Europe while you're here fighting to buy formula. Hearing it said so plainly made shame and fury twist inside me. I don't understand, I whispered. Why do you care? You don't even know us. Because Catherine would have cared, Richard said quietly. He hesitated, then added, and because I see her in you, the same strength, the same refusal to give up, even when everything feels hopeless. We sat in silence for a long while, listening to the ducks and Tommy's happy babbling. The late afternoon light shimmered across the water. What do you want from us? I finally asked. Richard turned toward me, his eyes steady. I want to help. No strings, no expectations. I have more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes and no family to leave it to. Catherine made me promise to make a difference, and helping you and Tommy feels like the most important thing I could ever do. And if I say no, then I'll respect that, he said simply. What I've already given is yours, regardless. But I hope you won't refuse. I'd like to be part of Tommy's life, and yours. Something in his voice made me study him more closely. This wasn't just about keeping a promise anymore. This was a lonely man finding meaning again. "I need time to think," I said at last. "Of course." Richard stood, moving slowly. Then he paused. "But Martha, there's something else you need to know." My pulse quickened. "What is it?" "I hired a private investigator," he said, lowering his voice, "to look into your daughter's situation overseas." My heart stopped. "What did you find?" "Sarah and David aren't staying in Paris by choice," Richard said grimly. "They've been lying to you. David never had a job there. They're living off credit cards, drifting from cheap hostels, posting fake photos to look successful online." The world tilted around me. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying they abandoned Tommy because they couldn't handle being parents, and now they're so deep in debt that even if they wanted to come home, they couldn't afford to." Richard reached into his jacket and handed me a thick manila envelope. "It's all in here. Financial records, social media screenshots, everything." He looked genuinely sorrowful. "I'm sorry, Martha," he said softly. "You deserve the truth." "I know this isn't what you wanted to hear." Richard's voice lingered in the cool air as he stood, then walked away down the path, leaving me alone on the bench with Tommy and the truth that had shattered everything I thought I knew. For the first time in months, I wasn't facing that truth alone. I didn't sleep for 3 nights. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table after Tommy went down, sifting through the envelope Richard had given me. The photos were the hardest. Sarah and David laughing over glasses of wine at cafes, posing by monuments, smiling as if the world owed them sunlight. Meanwhile, I was counting pennies to buy formula. But it was the financial records that broke me. Credit card statements maxed to the limit. Receipts from budget hostels, not luxury hotels. Declined transactions, bounced checks. A digital trail of 2 people living far beyond their means while running from responsibility. They hadn't left Tommy for opportunity. They'd left him because parenthood didn't fit the fantasy life they were chasing. On the 4th day, my phone rang. "Martha," Richard said gently, "I know this is a lot. Would you like to meet again? Maybe somewhere more private this time?" I looked at Tommy playing on a blanket surrounded by the expensive toys Richard had sent. "You can come here," I said quietly. "We need to talk." That evening, Richard arrived. He looked different, less formal, more human. He wore a simple sweater and jeans, and in his hands was a small bouquet of daisies. "For you," he said, almost shy. Catherine always said daisies were honest flowers. No pretense, just simple beauty. I placed them in an old mason jar, the only vase I owned, and something warm spread through me. It had been years since anyone brought me flowers. Even when Sarah's father was still around, he'd been practical, not sentimental. "Would you like some coffee?" I asked. "That would be nice," he said. While I prepared the mugs, Richard settled onto my worn sofa. Tommy crawled straight toward him, curious. I froze ready to step in, but Richard's face lit up with genuine delight. "Hello there, little man," he said softly, letting Tommy wrap tiny fingers around his hand. "You're getting so big, aren't you?" "He likes you," I said, handing him a cup of coffee. "I hope so," Richard smiled. "I don't have much experience with babies, but I've always wanted to learn." There was something wistful in his tone. "You said you and your wife never had children," I said gently. "Did you want them?" Richard's expression turned distant. "More than anything. We tried for 15 years before we finally accepted it wasn't going to happen. Catherine used to joke that we had enough love for a house full of kids, but nowhere to put it." "I'm sorry," I said quietly. "That must have been hard." "It was," he admitted. "But Catherine always believed everything happens for a reason, even if we can't see it yet." He glanced at Tommy, who was now happily gnawing on the strap of Richard's watch. "Maybe this is the reason," he said softly. "Maybe we were meant to save our love for him." The way he said our love made my heart skip. This wasn't charity anymore. This was something deeper. "Richard," I said carefully, "what exactly are you suggesting?" He took a slow breath. I'm suggesting that you don't have to do this alone anymore, that maybe Tommy needs a grandfather figure, and maybe I need a reason to feel useful again. I searched his face. And what about me? What do I need? He met my eyes without hesitation. I think you need someone who sees how strong you are, how much you've given up for that little boy, someone who wants to help carry the weight instead of adding to it. My throat tightened. When was the last time anyone had said something like that to me? I know this is sudden, Richard continued, his voice trembling slightly. You barely know me. But, Martha, helping you and Tommy, it's given me something I thought I'd lost forever, a reason to wake up. Before I could answer, my phone rang. Sarah. Answer it, Richard said softly. It's time you heard what she has to say. I put the call on speaker. Mom? Sarah's voice was strained, thinner than I remembered. How's Tommy? Is everything okay? He's fine, Sarah, I said evenly. We're managing. Listen, Mom, I need to ask you something and please don't be mad. Richard's jaw tightened. David and I are having some financial trouble. The job situation isn't as stable as we thought, and we were wondering, could you lend us a little money, just until things settle down? My stomach turned. How much? Well, we owe about $3,000 on our cards, rent's due, and we'll need plane tickets if we're going to come home for Christmas. Wait, I said sharply. Come home for Christmas? What about Tommy? There was silence on the other end, long, heavy silence that said more than words ever could. What about him? I asked, my voice trembling but steady. Are you planning to take him back? There was a long pause. Too long. Mom, Sarah finally said, we've been talking and, honestly, Tommy's doing so well with you. You're amazing with him and he's so attached to you now. We were thinking maybe it would be best if he just stayed put for a while longer. I felt Richard's hand on my shoulder, warm, steady, supportive. Sarah, I said, my voice stronger than it had been in months, let me ask you something. Do you love your son? Of course I love him, she snapped. What kind of question is that? Then why haven't you sent a single dollar for his care? Why haven't you called in 2 weeks? Why are you asking me for money while I'm barely keeping the lights on, raising the child you left behind? I didn't abandon him, she said defensively. I left him with his grandmother. You love him. You lied to me, Sarah, I said, feeling years of guilt and silence burning away. You lied about David's job. You lied about the temporary housing. You said you'd be back in 6 months. And all this time you've been posting pictures of your European dream life, while I've been choosing between my arthritis medication and baby formula. I could hear her crying on the other end, but for the first time, her tears didn't control me. Mom, please, she begged. We're desperate. We just need help getting back on our feet. Then we can figure out what's best for Tommy. No, Sarah, I said firmly. I'm done being your safety net while you play pretend. If you want to be Tommy's mother, then come home and be his mother. If you want to keep living your fantasy in Europe, then sign over guardianship legally so I can take care of him properly. You can't give me an ultimatum, she said through sobs. I'm not, I replied. I'm giving you the truth. Either you're his mother or you're not. You can't be both only when it's convenient. Richard's hand squeezed my shoulder, his eyes shining with quiet pride. I need time to think, Sarah whispered. You've had 9 months to think, I said softly. Figure it out, Sarah, but don't call me for money again until you've decided whether you want to be a mother or a tourist. And with that, I ended the call. The apartment fell silent, except for Tommy's cheerful babbling as he stacked the toy blocks Richard had brought him. That, Richard said quietly, was incredibly brave. I took a deep breath. That, I said, was long overdue. Richard stood and walked to the window, looking out at the quiet street where this strange story had begun. Martha, he said after a moment, I want to ask you something, and I want you to know there's no pressure, none at all. My heart began to race. I've been alone for 3 years. You've been alone, really alone, for 9 months. We're both too old for games. And too tired for anything that isn't real." He turned toward me. "What would you think about not being alone anymore?" I stared at this man, this kind, steady soul who had walked into my life like an answered prayer. "Are you asking me on a date, Richard Morrison?" He smiled, the kind of smile that reached his eyes and made them young again. "I'm asking you to consider letting me love you both. Tommy needs stability. You need support. And He paused, emotion catching in his throat. "I need purpose. Maybe we can give each other what we all need." At that exact moment, Tommy wobbled to his feet by the coffee table. We both froze, watching as he took his first unsteady steps across the room. 3 tiny, determined steps, straight into Richard's open arms. We gasped together as Tommy fell against his chest with a triumphant giggle. "Did you see that?" Richard whispered, voice trembling. "His first steps." I smiled through tears. "Yes," I said softly. "I saw it." But I wasn't just talking about Tommy. 6 months later, I stood in the kitchen of Richard's house, our house now watching through the window as he pushed Tommy on the backyard swing set he'd built himself. At 14 months, my grandson was walking confidently, talking non-stop, calling me Mama and Richard Papa. The guardianship papers had come through 3 weeks earlier. Sarah had finally made her choice signing over temporary custody while she and David sorted out their lives in Europe. She'd called once since then, tearful, apologetic, promising to visit soon. I wasn't holding my breath. Richard had proposed on a Tuesday morning in February over breakfast. No grand gesture, just a small velvet box beside my coffee cup and a trembling smile. "Catherine always said that when you find your family, you just know it," he said. "I found mine." The ring was simple, a single diamond set in his grandmother's gold band. It fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting all along. We married quietly at the courthouse, just the 3 of us, Richard, me, and Tommy. Judge Martinez smiled as she signed the papers and said she'd never seen a happier little family. Now, as I watched Richard lift Tommy high into the air, both of them laughing under the afternoon sun, I marveled at how much life had changed. My phone buzzed on the counter. For a split second, my heart tensed. Old habits die hard. But the message wasn't from Sarah. It was from Mrs. Chen, the neighbor I'd meant to text that night so long ago. "Martha, I just wanted to say how happy I am for you and Tommy. Richard is a wonderful man. You both deserve this joy. Would you like to come for dinner this weekend?" I made too much soup again. I smiled and texted back my thanks. The whispers and sideways glances from neighbors had faded months ago, replaced by warm smiles and genuine kindness. "Mama," Tommy's voice pulled me back. He was standing in the yard, pointing excitedly at a butterfly perched on his tiny finger. Richard crouched beside him, his eyes bright with wonder. "Look at that, buddy," he said gently. "It's a monarch butterfly. They travel thousands of miles to find their home." Tommy giggled as the butterfly fluttered away, then toddled toward me and wrapped his arms around my legs. I bent down and held him close, the sunlight wrapping around us like an embrace. Home, I thought. After everything, we were finally home. "Up, Mama!" I lifted Tommy into my arms, marveling at how solid he'd become, how warm and sturdy. The thin, hungry baby I'd once struggled to feed was now a thriving little boy with chubby cheeks and bright, curious eyes. "Richard," I said, settling onto the porch steps with Tommy on my lap, "do you ever wonder if all of this is too good to be true?" He sat beside me, his arm curling around my shoulders in the way that now felt as natural as breathing. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but then I remember what Catherine used to say about miracles." What did she say? That they're not always dramatic. Sometimes a miracle is just getting exactly what you need, exactly when you need it, even if you didn't know you needed it. I leaned into him, letting the warmth of his arm steady me. Tommy played idly with the wedding ring on my finger, the late day light gleaming on the gold. "I never thought I'd get married again," I confessed softly. After Sarah's father left, I told myself I was better off alone. Richard's eyes searched mine. Were you happy before Tommy? Before me? I thought about it. I was surviving. I was proud of being independent, proud that I'd raised Sarah on my own and built a life that was steady if not exciting. But happy? I shook my head. I don't think I remembered what that felt like. He kissed the top of my head. And now? Now I wake up grateful, I said. Not just for the security, though that's a blessing, but for this, for having someone to share Tommy's milestones with, someone to worry with when he's teething, to laugh with when he does something ridiculous, someone to grow old with. Richard chuckled. We're already old. We're seasoned, I teased. There's a difference. Tommy had drifted to sleep against my chest, his small fist wrapped around my finger. The afternoon sun bathed us in gold. Children's laughter drifted faintly from down the street. Martha, Richard said carefully, I got a call from my lawyer today. My heart skipped. About what? About making this permanent, the adoption process. If you're comfortable, I'd like to legally adopt Tommy, give him our name. I want him to always know where he belongs. Tears burned behind my eyes. In the chaos of the past year, I hadn't even considered that possibility. But hearing him say it, I realized how much I wanted it too. You want to be his grandfather legally, not just in practice. I want to be his grandfather in every way, Richard said softly, and I want him to be our son, not just yours. I looked down at Tommy's peaceful face, his dark lashes brushing his cheeks. He would never remember the fear or the hunger. His earliest memories would be this porch, this love, this home. Yes, I whispered. Yes, I want that too. Just then my phone rang. Sarah's name lit the screen. For the first time in months, I didn't feel dread. Answer it, Richard said gently. Whatever it is, we'll face it together. Hi, Sarah. Mom. Her voice was quiet, older somehow. How are you? How's Tommy? We're doing well, I said, glancing at Richard. Very well. I saw the pictures you posted, she said after a pause. Tommy with the man you married, he looks happy. He is happy, I said. We all are. I'm glad, she whispered. I know I hurt you. I know I abandoned Tommy. Saying I'm sorry isn't enough. No, I said gently, but it's a start. David and I are coming home next month. We saved enough for plane tickets and we both found jobs in Portland. Nothing fancy, but honest work. That's good, Sarah. I'm proud of you for taking responsibility. I want to see Tommy. I know I don't have any rights anymore, and he probably doesn't even remember me, but I want to try, even if it's just as his aunt or a friend. Richard's hand found mine, silent and steady. We can arrange visits, I said. Supervised at first, until he's comfortable, but you need to understand something. Richard and I are adopting Tommy. This is his home now. We're his parents. You can be part of his life, but you can't disrupt his stability. There was a long silence. Then I heard her crying softly. I understand, Mom, she said at last, and I think that's what's best. He deserves parents who put him first. I wasn't ready before, but now I know the difference between wanting to be a mother and being ready to be one. Maybe someday I'll be ready, but right now I just want him to know I love him, even if I can't care for him the way he deserves. After we hung up, the dusk settled around us, soft and calm. Richard brushed a tear from my cheek. How do you feel about that? He asked. Hopeful, I said, surprising myself. For the first time, she sounded like she understood. Maybe she is growing up. I looked at the man beside me, the man who had given me everything I'd stopped believing I deserved. If she wants to be part of Tommy's life, I said quietly, she'll learn that love isn't just a feeling, it's a choice. Every day in big ways and small ones. It's getting up in the middle of the night when he's sick. It's putting his needs before your wants. It's staying when things get hard. Richard smiled softly. It's choosing each other. It's choosing each other, I echoed. The stars began to appear, one by one, over our little house. And in that moment I realized the most beautiful love stories aren't about young passion or grand gestures. They're about two people who have lived long enough to know what truly matters, finding each other when they need it most. They're about a warrior woman who thought she'd fight her battles alone, discovering that the greatest victories are the ones shared with the people who choose to stay and fight beside you. Tommy stirred in my arms, opened his eyes, and smiled sleepily at the two faces watching him with boundless love. "Mama, Papa," he whispered. Then he closed his eyes and drifted back to sleep. And for the first time, I knew it completely. We were home.